17-year-old Alyssa Hatcher was arrested by Lake County deputies yesterday.
David says the teen paid $400 to a friend to kill her parent.
Alyssa Hatcher, a seemingly normal 17-year-old high schooler. And this is her mother, Penny Hatcher, a devoted single parent deeply concerned about her daughter's future. Like countless American families, their relationship was strained by parental discipline, specifically revolving around Alyssa's boyfriend, Garrett Corson. When Penny grew alarmed by the relationship, she implemented the ultimate punishment for a modern teen. She took away Alyssa's phone and strictly forbade her from seeing Garrett. To Penny, this was a firm boundary. To Alyssa, it was an intolerable act of imprisonment and control. That seemingly small act of discipline ignited a teenage rage that would culminate in an ultimate, unthinkable betrayal. Confined and furious, Alyssa immediately communicated her desperation to Garrett Corson. The messages exchanged between the two teenagers were not just angry rants. They quickly evolved into a detailed, calculated murder plot. Police records revealed that the young couple methodically discussed how to eliminate Penny Hatcher so they could live their lives together unrestricted. This was a premeditated act, conceived not out of self-defense, but out of a cold, self-serving desire for absolute freedom. Having secured Garrett's commitment, the two set the plan in motion on the night of January 11th, 2022. Under the cover of darkness, Garrett Corson silently slipped into the Hatcher home, let in by Alyssa. He retrieved a knife from the kitchen and made his way to Penny's bedroom while she slept. Garrett commenced the attack, and Penny awoke, screaming in terror. It was at this moment of pure violence that Alyssa Hatcher entered the room. Court documents confirm that Alyssa did not try to stop the assault. Instead, she aided the attack on her own mother. The climax was brief and brutal. With the teenage couple acting in concert, Penny Hatcher was murdered. The act was complete, the jailer was removed, and the teenagers had sealed their fate as parricides. Following the murder, the immediate priority for the couple was the cover-up. They attempted to clean the scene before Alyssa placed a 911 call, fabricating a story about an intruder or robber who had killed her mother. However, the police immediately grew suspicious of the inconsistencies in her account. The tide turned completely when investigators analyzed the text messages and call records. The digital evidence detailing the meticulous planning and the shocking lack of remorse in the immediate aftermath shattered her victim facade. Within days, Alyssa Hatcher and Garrett Corson were arrested and charged with first-degree murder.
In school for things like this, but as far as juveniles, teenagers.
The case went to court, where the prosecution presented the clear evidence of premeditation driven by petty teenage grievances. Facing the possibility of life without parole, Alyssa Hatcher ultimately pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in July 2024, avoiding a harsher sentence. The final judgment was delivered. Alyssa Hatcher was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Her boyfriend, Garrett Corson, received the same 40-year sentence for his role in the killing. A 17-year-old girl's quest for the freedom to see her boyfriend cost her mother her life and cost Alyssa her youth and her freedom for the next 4 decades. Her case stands as a terrifying example of modern teenage rage and the fatal consequences of the ultimate betrayal.
What conversation did you have with him about killing your family?
He said it like it was a game.
Aaron Caffey was a 16-year-old in Alba, Texas, whose life centered on his new girlfriend, Murphy, a relationship his conservative parents, Terry and Penny Caffey, deeply disapproved of. The Caffeys were deeply religious and protective, and they imposed strict rules, demanding Aaron end the relationship due to Murphy's troubled background. This parental restriction was met with fierce, self-centered rage by Aaron.
He perceived his parents as the sole deliberate obstacle to his romantic happiness and independence. The conflict escalated beyond typical teenage rebellion, pushing Aaron to believe that his desire for Murphy and his parents' insurance money justified an unimaginable act. This entitlement and frustration led him to share his deadly problem with his girlfriend, who then introduced him to others willing to carry out the murder plot.
Aaron's simple desire for freedom transformed into a meticulous plot involving multiple conspirators. Through his girlfriend Murphy, he connected with Charlie Wilkinson and Charles Wade, who were enlisted to carry out the murders. Aaron's plan was purely pragmatic. He would ensure his parents and younger siblings were eliminated, allowing him to collect his inheritance and live freely with Murphy. Aaron's role was to provide the plan and the access, ensuring the attack would be swift and clean. He directed the killers to murder his mother, father, and two younger siblings, Matthew, 13, and Tyler, 8, and then burn the house down to destroy the evidence. This detailed planning confirmed the malice and cold calculation behind the act, demonstrating Aaron's absolute prioritization of his selfish desires over the lives of his entire family. In the early morning hours of March 1, 2008, the chilling plan was executed. Aaron ensured the house was accessible, then stayed away with Murphy to establish an alibi. The three killers entered the home and located the sleeping family. They brutally shot Penny Caffey, mother, and both young brothers, Matthew and Tyler, killing them instantly. They then shot Terry Caffey, father, multiple times. Believing all four victims were dead, the killers deliberately set the house on fire and fled the scene. This act of extreme violence was intended to ensure not only the deaths of the victims, but the complete destruction of the evidence. However, in an unexpected twist that Aaron had not planned for, the sheer violence failed to achieve its final goal. Miraculously, despite being shot 4 times and sustaining severe burns, Terry Caffey survived the brutal attack. In an almost unimaginable display of will, he managed to crawl nearly 400 yards from the burning house to call for help. Hospitalized and severely injured, Terry provided investigators with the first crucial clue. He stated that Aaron was the one responsible, believing his son was involved in the crime. The subsequent investigation quickly focused on Aaron and his inner circle. Cell phone records and detailed interrogation led to the swift arrest of the 3 killers and, most significantly, Aaron Caffey and his girlfriend, Murphy. The devastating testimony of the sole survivor immediately shattered Aaron's carefully constructed alibi and exposed the full extent of the complex murder plot. The trial of Aaron Caffey and his co-conspirators exposed one of the most shocking cases of familial betrayal in Texas history. The prosecution detailed how Aaron, driven by greed and the desire for his forbidden relationship, willingly sacrificed his entire immediate family. Aaron eventually pleaded guilty to multiple charges, including 3 counts of murder. The final judgment was pronounced. Aaron Caffey was sentenced to 2 life sentences plus 40 years, with a parole eligibility date after serving 40 years. All of his accomplices received lengthy prison sentences. The freedom and romantic bliss that Aaron sought came at the cost of his mother and 2 innocent younger brothers. His case remains a dark symbol of how youthful selfishness, when paired with outside manipulation, can lead to the darkest form of familial annihilation.
I normally reached out and told somebody what I was feeling or thinking. I wasn't expecting it to burn him.
Christina Marie was a 16-year-old girl in Missouri whose primary focus was an intense relationship with an older man named Jamie. Her parents, Scott and Melissa, maintained clear boundaries and strongly disapproved of this relationship, believing it was harmful to Christina's development and future. The conflict escalated dramatically when her parents issued a direct mandate. The relationship must end or all privileges would be withdrawn. This severe restriction was met by Christina with profound resentment. She viewed her parents' authority not as guidance, but as an insurmountable obstruction to her personal life and her chosen partner. This sustained, intense clash between her desire for autonomy and her parents' control created a highly volatile situation, setting the stage for a deliberate act to permanently eliminate the source of her constraints.
With her freedom entirely curtailed, Christina Marie formalized a plan of double murder with her boyfriend, Jamie. The plot was chillingly pragmatic and focused entirely on the outcome: inheritance, freedom, and an unrestricted life together. Christina's role was pivotal. She provided Jamie with unhindered access to the house and detailed information about her parents' sleeping habits and schedules. They discussed how to obtain the necessary firearm and how to meticulously stage the crime scene to look like a tragic, violent robbery gone wrong, ensuring Christina would emerge as the sole traumatized survivor. This extensive, cold-blooded digital planning confirmed that the crime was not an act of fleeting teenage rage, but a deliberate, premeditated transaction. 2 lives for one dream romance.
The cold pre-dawn hours of April 12th were chosen to execute the plan. Christina Marie quietly ensured her boyfriend, Jamie, gained entry to the home. Following the detailed plan, Jamie moved directly to the master bedroom where Scott and Melissa were asleep. He shot both parents multiple times at close range. The violence was swift, brutal, and tragically final. Immediately after committing the double murder, Christina quickly rejoined Jamie. Their immediate focus was not panic or remorse, but on securing the assets. They ransacked the house to support the false robbery narrative. Christina then initiated her act, calling 911 and launching into a performance as the frantic, bound, and terrified daughter who had been forced to listen as intruders murdered her parents. The parental authority was finally silenced, but the freedom Christina craved was built on an irreversible foundation of deceit. Christina Marie's elaborate performance as the traumatized victim quickly crumbled under police scrutiny. Detectives found her account of being bound and terrorized to be full of glaring inconsistencies, noting her minimal injuries and suspiciously composed demeanor. The fatal breakdown in her story came from the evidence trail. Cell phone data and witness testimony confirmed that Christina and Jamie had spent time together after the supposed home invasion. Presented with the overwhelming contradictions in her statements and the irrefutable digital evidence of their planning, Christina's facade shattered. She was immediately arrested and, under intense questioning, confessed to plotting the murder with Jamie, admitting that the entire incident was a staged execution designed to secure her independence and her inheritance. The trial of Christina Marie shocked the nation, exposing the terrifying reality of a teenager who valued a forbidden romance over her family's lives. The prosecution convincingly argued that the motive was pure selfishness and greed. Facing undeniable evidence of premeditation and co-conspiracy, Christina Marie was found guilty of first-degree murder for the deaths of both her parents. The final judgment was pronounced. Christina Marie was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. Her boyfriend, Jamie, received an equally severe sentence. The ultimate freedom she had violently sought, one of unrestricted life with her lover, was instantly replaced by the cold, permanent confines of the prison system. Christina Marie's case stands as a harrowing example of how a teenager's misplaced desire can tragically morph into the ultimate, fatal act of betrayal against her own family.
Jasmine Richardson was only 12 years old in Medicine Hat, Canada, a gifted student whose personal life was centered on the Gothic subculture and a deeply concerning relationship. She was intensely involved with Jeremy Stinky, a man 11 years her senior. Her parents, Mark and Deborah Richardson, observed this growing attachment and the dark themes associated with it, and out of profound concern for their daughter's safety and well-being, they issued a strict order to immediately end the relationship. This restriction created an atmosphere of extreme tension and rebellion within the home. Jasmine perceived her parents' authority as an unbearable obstacle that stood definitively in the way of her desired life and her emotional connection with Jeremy. This escalating conflict eventually led the couple to believe that the only path to unrestricted freedom was to permanently eliminate the source of her constraints.
The plot was detailed and brutal, planned meticulously through online chat messages between the 12-year-old Jasmine Richardson and 23-year-old Jeremy Steinke. The central theme of their messages was the removal of the obstacles, her parents. Evidence showed they discussed both suicide and murder, eventually settling on the latter to ensure their pure love could continue without constraint. Jasmine provided Jeremy with explicit details of the house layout, her family schedule, and, most chillingly, her 8-year-old brother Jacob was included in the plot. The motive was not just freedom, but also an inherent cruelty, as Jeremy was quoted referencing the movie Natural Born Killers and stating that the younger brother would not be spared. This extensive digital evidence confirmed the murder was a premeditated act of vengeance and a cold-blooded pursuit of selfish desires. On the night of April 23, 2006, the pact was violently fulfilled. Jeremy Stink, high on drugs and alcohol, gained entry to the Richardson home. The attack began when he was confronted by Deborah Richardson, mother, and then Mark Richardson, father, both of whom were stabbed multiple times with a knife in the ensuing struggle. Most tragically, following the initial murders, the youngest victim, 8-year-old Jacob Richardson, was also killed, his throat slashed while he was in his bed with his toys. Jasmine Richardson was either present in the house or nearby, and immediately following the triple murder, she fled the scene with Jeremy Stink. The violence was extreme and final, fulfilling the couple's dark fantasy and instantly making Jasmine the youngest person in Canadian history to be charged with multiple counts of first-degree murder.
The bodies were discovered the next day, and a frantic search was launched for the missing 12-year-old, Jasmine Richardson. She and Jeremy were quickly found in a nearby town, hiding out at a friend's house. The foundation of their defense, that Jeremy acted alone out of passion, was immediately destroyed by the irrefutable digital evidence. Police recovered the lengthy online chat transcripts detailing the entire plot, confirming Jasmine's role as the mastermind and co-conspirator. These messages, which contained graphic references to the plan, proved that the murders were a calculated joint effort motivated by the forbidden love and the removal of her family. Faced with overwhelming evidence, both Jasmine and Jeremy were arrested and charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder.
The trial of the 12-year-old Jasmine Richardson shook Canada, highlighting the extreme vulnerability of children influenced by dark online subcultures. Due to her age, her trial was held under the Youth Criminal Justice Act, where she was found guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder. The final judgment was pronounced. Jasmine Richardson was sentenced to the maximum of 10 years, which included 4 years in a psychiatric facility and subsequent community supervision. Her older accomplice, Jeremy Stingy, received a life sentence with no chance of parole for 25 years. Jasmine, referred to as JR in court, successfully completed her sentence and was released in 2016, with the judge noting she had successfully rehabilitated. Her case remains an unprecedented and chilling example of how teenage defiance and a toxic romance can lead to the permanent annihilation of an entire family.
Sarah Johnson was a 16-year-old girl in the quiet, affluent town of Bellevue, Idaho, living a seemingly privileged life that masked intense internal resentment. Her parents, Diane and Alan Johnson, provided everything materially, but enforced very strict rules, particularly regarding Sarah's relationships. Her life revolved around an older, forbidden boyfriend, a connection her conservative parents absolutely refused to sanction. They issued a non-negotiable ultimatum, creating a massive life crisis for Sarah. She convinced herself that her parents were not protectors, but tyrants who actively stood in the way of her ultimate happiness and freedom with the man she loved. This profound conflict between her desperate teenage desire and her parents' unyielding authority grew into a toxic conviction. Her only path to independence and happiness required their permanent removal. This resentment, devoid of normal compassion, became the sole fuel for a calculated and deadly plot. Sarah Johnson's resentment quickly solidified into a detailed, sinister, and premeditated plot. Her intention was not just to kill, but to orchestrate the crime to secure her financial inheritance and maintain her relationship without interference. The plan centered on the family's .22 caliber rifle, a weapon she had access to and knew how to use. Sarah meticulously planned the timing, deciding to commit the double murder early in the morning when her parents would be most vulnerable and the community asleep. Court evidence later revealed her chilling composure in the days leading up to the crime. She maintained a facade of a typical teenager while internally finalizing the logistics of the execution. The strategy was to make the crime look like a random, brutal home invasion, thereby casting herself as the traumatized, innocent survivor. This calculated detachment revealed a mind that had fully prioritized selfish desire over the sacred bond of family. The cold dawn of September 2, 2003, was the moment Sarah Johnson enacted her plan. She armed herself with the family's .22 caliber rifle and moved stealthily to the master bedroom. Her father, Alan Johnson, was the first victim, shot in his sleep. When the sound of the gunshot awoke her mother, Diane Johnson, and she rushed towards the bedroom, Sarah immediately turned the weapon on her as well, shooting her mother and ensuring her silence. The crime was a quick, brutal double matricide and patricide. Immediately following the murders, Sarah proceeded with her cover-up, attempting to establish the false narrative of a robbery. She placed the rifle in an outdoor garbage container and then fled the home to a neighbor's house, where she began her performance as the shocked, traumatized survivor who had narrowly escaped the supposed violent intruder. Sarah Johnson's elaborate performance as the traumatized victim quickly deteriorated under the scrutiny of seasoned investigators. Her tearful, hysterical account of the fictional intruder was full of inconsistencies that raised immediate suspicion. The narrative began to fully crumble when police located the murder weapon, the .22 caliber rifle, in the outdoor garbage bin. Forensics confirmed that the shots were fired from an extremely close range, completely contradicting her story of a violent struggle with the stranger. The final, irrefutable piece of evidence was the bloody rubber glove found inside the home, which contained Sarah's DNA.
This undeniable physical evidence, combined with her increasingly fragile and contradictory testimony, exposed the truth. The trauma was entirely a consequence of her own deadly actions. Sarah Johnson was arrested and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, ending her brief, violent, and failed attempt at securing independence.
The trial of Sarah Johnson in 2005 became a national headline, exposing the tragic consequences of extreme teenage entitlement. The prosecution presented an undeniable case that she eliminated her parents simply because they obstructed her forbidden relationship. The jury quickly found the then 18-year-old Sarah guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder. The final judgment was pronounced. Sarah Johnson was sentenced to 2 concurrent life sentences with a minimum of 30 years before becoming eligible for parole. The unrestricted freedom she coveted, a life of financial control and romantic bliss, was instantly replaced by the cold, definitive confinement of a prison cell. Sarah Johnson's case stands as a harrowing and enduring testament to how a teenager's selfish desire for a relationship can tragically morph into the ultimate act of betrayal and permanent self-destruction.